It's fairly common for video games to get cancelled during production, even when the game's nearly complete. Nintendo did this with Star Fox 2, which at the time had received a lot of publicity at trade shows and magazines. In fact, a lot of cancelled games and prototypes have had at least a little bit of publicity beforehand, even something as small as just an entry in a catalog. One game that didn't have any publicity at all, though, was a game called Sunman. Sunman was made for the NES by EIM and planned for publication by Sunsoft, a company that made a number of well-renowned games for the system, like Blaster Master and Batman. Sunman was an original superhero who protected Mega Rose City. Donning his superhero outfit with a large S on the chest and a large red cape, Sunman used his super strength, his eye lasers, and his ability to fly to protect the city, while the newspaper Daily Times covered his adventures against Spectre. If all of this sounds similar to Superman, well, that's because it is. Sunman was originally designed to be a Superman game, but for unknown reasons the project was cancelled and Sunman was born. Even though they remade the game for their new superhero, the game still never got officially released. There's two popular theories for why Sunman exists, one being that Sunsoft created a Superman game before getting a hold of the license and just couldn't get it in time or they dropped it, kind of like how Journey of Silius was originally supposed to be a Terminator game. The other theory is that Superman was way too powerful to create a game around, and they scrapped it and made a weaker character instead. The second theory is supported by an interview on OneUp.com with Kenji Ino, who had worked on both the original Superman game and Sunman. But if that was the only reason for it, then Sunsoft would have released 3 other games with Superman in them during the 16-bit console generation. Whatever the reason for Sunman's cancellation, the game still has a legacy. The Genesis Superman game made by Sunsoft borrowed elements from Sunman, including parts of the stages. The game's also fully playable if you know where to look. The website LostLevels.org, who were the original ones to find the Sunman cartridge, released the ROM of the game for people to check out, along with an earlier version of the game which still had the Superman license attached. You can check out their site for more information and to try the game for yourself.
Then there's no time to waste.
More delays than Duke Nukem Forever, it's the Let's Play of Superman 64, and I feel weird admitting this, guys, but I'm actually kind of excited about this episode, and I don't think it's just the time I've spent away from this game. I think it's actually the cough syrup I'm on, which is not working very well. But we are going to cover something that I've been waiting to cover for a long time, actually, and I'm finally getting around to it now. Now, a number of you are actually also already aware of this, so this might be retreading ground for you, but for those who don't, the beta of Superman 64 was leaked, at least the footage of it was, probably about a year ago at least, by Rareware Central. Now, they have a beta cartridge of the game. Apparently it was a pre-release copy for previews for magazines. Rareware Central actually approached me about it way back then and gave me a ton of footage to use. And then, of course, like an idiot, I took forever to make a proper update. So I owe Rareware Central humongous amounts of apology and a humongous amount of thanks, because without them, this episode would not be happening. At least the in-flight movie part would be. The actual gameplay itself, sadly, would still happen. It's hard to come to terms with that sometimes. But while we skate through these rings, you'll notice that we're still about the same as usual, really. Nothing else has really changed. We're going to be coming soon to a ring... yes, I did say soon. Shut up. Coming soon to a stage where the whole ring stage setup changes, I guess, only slightly. It won't be a major, massive change, but there'll actually be a tiny bit more to do with the rings. So I think we're only going to have one more in-flight movie after this episode, and then, unfortunately, from there on out, the rings will be back to normal. I think we're going to be covering for the next in-flight movie the multiplayer of the game, which I haven't really said anything about. So we'll see what comes about for that. But for now, as we keep flying through these rings... Oh man, it feels so weird to be back to this again, I'm not going to lie. I know... I'll just state this right now. I know the project always takes a while, and I apologize for that, but... Some people have been trying to like save face from saying like, man, would you want to be playing a game like this? I still do get some sort of twisted amount of enjoyment out of this. So, well, I prefer the normal stages over the ring stages, but you know what I mean. So yes, the project is still going on. It's just I'll see if I can be a tiny bit more frequent. I can't guarantee, but I'll try. Tiny bit. As we come up towards our first mini-game, and I guess that's what I'll call it, it's just a simple takedown of 4 Dark Shadows. And since this takes about 10 seconds, I'll just go ahead and say right now, prepare for your in-flight movie, the Superman 64 beta footage brought to you by Rareware Central. Alright, before we get started, can I point out that this is the best and most frightening logo for a company I've ever seen. I kind of wish they had kept that, because that would be amazing. Alright, now as you can see, pretty much everything about the actual HUD itself is the exact same. The opening music's the same, the menus are the same, even this. That's the same. What's different is here. First off, it's the Daily Planet newspaper instead of their website. Second off, there's actually a mission right away instead of just flying through rings. I will point out, there are no rings to fly through in this version of the game. Except supposedly for the tutorials. And really, that's what makes me think that's what Eric Kahn was thinking about in our interview. I have a feeling he thinks that this is the version of the game that went out. Because to say that there's no rings in the game except for tutorial, and then the actual commercial version having 7 stages full of rings, but then this version not having anything, really makes me think maybe the version we got was partially a mistake, I don't know. Or either that or he forgot about all the BS he had to deal with. But either way, this layout of the game is a little bit different, in the sense that the mini-games you play in the ring stages in the retail version are now actual stages in this game. So the mission in here is to save the ambulance. Notice the checkpoint, by the way, or the checklist, the objective checklist. I forgot to point that out. That is a big thing that is sorely lacking in the commercial version. You also start off with your superpowers right away, or at least part of it. They still have the meter that can run out, and there's still items you can pick up, but traditionally they at least give you a bit of power to work with, maybe the eye lasers or the super breath. X-ray vision also seems to show up, but it seems to be as ineffective as it is in the retail game, so it's good to know that really didn't make a difference. And now once we beat this last guy here, that's it for this stage, which leads up to the next action stage. But I need to preface this with one thing first. The sound file you are about to hear, absolutely amazing.
Hello, me superhero, me rescue animals.
The first time I heard that, I cracked up laughing for like 5 minutes straight. And yes, I realize that is completely stupid, but I love Bizarro. Bizarro is my favorite Superman character, next to the guys like Lobo and other ones, but the voice they used is just so goofy, because they clearly have the voice actor for Superman from the animated series for random clips. I think it's Tim Daly? But, like, he clearly did voice work for this game. There's even more audio files of him in this game. But we've shown off one of the other missions, which was not in the game, saving Rhinobots, and fighting bosses outside in midair at that, too. It shows off some slightly different moves that Superman has, too, like kicking. Apparently, the combat in this version is completely different and revolves around using all the C buttons, instead of just holding one button like it is in the retail version. Meanwhile, boss fights are still pretty easy and still susceptible to the eye lasers if you have them. Alright, now this is actually stage 8 in the commercial game, but it is different. It's been split up into 2 stages in this version. Now, I'm not going to show off all of it because, well, then I'd have nothing to show next episode. But the stage itself, the actual layout of the stage is pretty much the same. There are some slight differences. But mainly they revolve around Jimmy. Like, the text is different when you talk to him, and when you save him, he also says a different voice clip. Superman does, sorry.
Thanks. Good job, Jimmy.
That does not show up in the commercial game at all. The getting stuck on the wall there, though, yeah, no, that's still in the commercial game. Now, the second part of the stage is fighting Darkseid, which is actually just part of the normal stage anyways, but one cool thing about Darkseid in this version is at least he throws items at you to try to damage you.
Like a job for Superman.
Now, this is another stage we haven't got to yet. This is the subway stage. This is stage 10, if memory serves me. In the actual commercial game, it's a lot shorter and simpler what you have to do. This version seemed to be a lot more fleshed out with you having to take out kryptonite generators. Or, sorry, diffusers. Thank you, game. Even the beta game's telling me off. But everything else is the same. The stage layout's the same. Except for one thing. In this version, you have to fight a different boss. The Metallo, which... the fact that they call it The Metallo almost justifies what I said last episode. But of course, when you get to this stage, you do not fight Metallo. You've actually already fought him in a different stage. We fought him in stage 6, so the fact that he's here... Actually, that's a weird thing about the beta version, too. A lot of the bosses are in different stages altogether. Like, you saw Mala in that random stage where you had to destroy the Rhino bots. You're going to see momentarily... No, we're going back to the stage. But you're going to see momentarily another character appears in a different stage that wasn't there before. So this is the second half of the stage. This is actually pretty much what the actual version of the stage, Stage 10, is in the retail game. Just fighting a giant walking robot and flying past subway trains. So, but notice the boss health meter. I did not point it out with Mala, but there's a boss health meter in this game, and that is another sorely lacking thing from the retail version. Also, the yes/no nipples are still there. Just needed to point that one out. Now, this preview you're seeing right here is the final stage of the game, so I'm going to be showing very little of it. So little, in fact, that all you're going to see is the game over screen. Which, Lex didn't win in this version. Thing to point out,
This looks like a job for
all this that happens, this is actually supposed to be in Metropolis. It's not a virtual reality world like it is in the commercial version. I guess this is before DC said, no, it has to be, Superman doesn't have to be beating up actual people. Alright, so now we're going to be checking out some of the other stages here. This is stage 4, where we had to save Lois earlier. This version is incomplete. There are no enemies in the stage. A number of the stages in this game are shown off in their early form, but you can see that the conveyor belts are still there. The room that Lois was held in is still there, but she's not actually in there herself. So I don't know if that means that this was just an idea for a later date, or this is just the early version of that before they got to it. Now we're going to even show off our little piston robot buddy still there. Everything seems to be the same. There is no ramp there, though. That's the only physical thing I see different so far. Well, okay, this too. The room with the block puzzle. The room with the block puzzle, for some reason, now has computers in it. That's one of the major differences. That room off to the side is still off-colored, and it is still there. There's no Lois, and you can walk through it because I guess they haven't finished setting everything up yet at this point. But everything else seems to be about the same. You fly through, like all the doorways are still here, just no enemies, no throwable items either. No forklifts, nothing. So I guess this is just a demo version to show off. Like, this had to have not been meant for people to see for reviews because it's obviously very incomplete. But it did have some cool things like kryptonite laser beams, which actually makes sense for Superman. Alright, now we're over to stage 2, the dam. And this stage does not have its collision map set up yet, so we can fly through everything, which is kind of like the actual game, in a way. Ooh. But no, this shows off some cool things about stage layout. Now, I don't know how many of you guys who are watching or listening to this know about designing 3D stages. But one of the cool things is a lot of them are actually physically connected together, even if there's like little teleport points. Case in point here, the elevator you have to go through at the beginning of stage 2. If you go all the way down, and yes, it does take a while, you will actually get to the point where the elevator lets out. That seems a little bit excessive, maybe, but it's cool that the entire area is completely connected, because you would think playing it that it isn't, but no, it's so sweet. Well, sweet in a relative term. Everything else in this stage is more or less the same. Well, Mala's not in this room yet, but just standard enemies are, so I don't know if this was meant to be the point where Mala was supposed to come in, or if this was just kind of a placeholder, or what. If you fly around into the rooms where you had to defuse the bombs, freeze the bombs, they also aren't there yet. Everything else is there, the danger signs and everything, but they haven't made that move yet. Which makes me wonder if half the stuff that they had in the released game was just panic when they found out they had to redo it again and they just wanted to get the game out. The danger signs are there. That's the best part there. I'm glad they left that in. Flying out to the water area, you can hear a slightly different sound effect for the water, which is not at all obnoxious. But they left our favorite friend in there, the giant mutant eel. Does not do any damage to you yet. They haven't put in any damage mapping on it, but it's there because why the hell not at this point, right? Now, this is one of the stages that has the most differences in it. This is LexCorp stage, and if you look right away, there's a boss here. And there's all these lovely fancy chairs and desks, too. This is Parasite. We have not met him yet. We won't be meeting him until about stage 10. So he's the boss of that stage. But for now, in this version, he was actually intended to be a boss here. And he can actually fly, too. He's got all the Superman powers just like he does in the show. So now, it's weird because in the release version of the game, Lex is the quote-unquote boss of this stage. But at the same time, the passcode you need to defuse the kryptonite machine actually says it's a note to Parasite on it. So that is actually a leftover note from this version of the game. Now going to Lex's office here, you'll notice there's a couple of key differences. First off, no Lex Luthor in a tube, which is kind of a big thing. It looks actually a lot more like it does in the show with the chairs and everything. Not even that table in the corner. Or the desk. See, the desk is there and proper, no sheets on it or anything, so I don't know if this was once again intended to be changed later on, or if this is how it was going to look in the final version.
This looks like a job for Superman.
Also, apparently elevators are really hard to walk out of. Moving on to the GoldenEye room here, there's a bunch of posters on the wall when they're supposed to be static, and going to everyone's favorite Luthor puzzle room. It does not have the Windows 95 screensaver, which everyone pointed out, and somehow I missed that. Sorry, it has it in that tube, just not the first one. But notice how the hologram Lex Luthor's here now, so he's kind of taunting you while you're trying to solve the puzzle. Which makes sense, because if you screw up the puzzle, you get taunted by Lex saying, how come you can't spell my last name? So now this actually makes sense for why that message shows up. Meanwhile, here's Parasite showing off throwing chairs and changing skin color. I assume that's the main reason they got rid of the chairs was because they got rid of Parasite, although it did add a nice bit of character to it. And since this stage is not completely set up properly, as soon as you kill Parasite, the stage ends, and you seem to be able to do that right away, at least in this version. It might be cheats or on to look at the stages or not. And really, that's kind of it for the core differences of the game itself. Now, there are some extra bios in the game. Like, the original version, the release version, has bios, but it has it for about 5 or 6 characters. This one has a surprisingly detailed one in the Shadow Walkers, which points out that they are cybernetic soldiers. So basically, they're robots, instead of being holograms like they are in the actual game. And of course, the one thing I'm still kind of bitter about in general, the removal of Bizarro. All things considered, he wasn't really a villain in the show, but I mean, listen to that voice clip again.
Hello.
Wouldn't you love to have something like that in this game? That'd be amazing. Even if he's just like a character who tried to help you but couldn't succeed, like kind of like he does in the show and even in the comics. There's one more character. Mercy Graves actually, while she never shows up in the game itself, or the main game, she does show up in multiplayer. She's one of the playable characters, so we'll be getting to that once we get to it. The beta version, at least the footage I got from Rareware Central, does not show off any of the multiplayer, but the box for the game apparently does advertise it, so it looks like it's probably still the same as it was in the retail version. Now here's the showing off of the buttons. Keep in mind, in the retail game, they just show you like a text blurb that says what the buttons do, that's it. This version is a lot more detailed, and apparently all the C buttons do attacks, which I find really weird. That's gotta be just kind of a huge headache in general to manage. Which is probably why they decided to swap it for just one button for the attacks. But other than that, that's it for all the footage I've got. Overall, I think this version of Superman, had we gotten it, would have been a little bit better. Definitely no rings, which would have been a nice positive,
This
but
looks like a job for Superman.
I don't know. I almost prefer the version we have now just because of its like kitschy charm, in how unabashedly bad it is. But I feel like had we gotten this version, the beta version, I don't think it would have kind of the same reputation it does now. And maybe we're better off for that. Maybe we just need one horribly bad Superman game to always get upset about. That or I'm nuts. Probably nuts. And with that, we're at the end of the episode, but since this is a Superman episode, we can't end it without any glitches, right? Let's see what we missed. All of the glitches in this stage seem to revolve around this one minigame, Save the Hostages from the Hijacked Airplane. Now, it seems perfectly normal at first, just kill all the enemies, but everyone acts weird in it, like this guy. And then you guys can walk up in space together. And then if you walk towards the wing of the plane, you'll get teleported and fly for some reason. The whole thing is weird. But what's really strange about this minigame in general is that you don't actually have to rescue the hostages. You just need to distract the shooters. You can run around them in circles for the whole 45 seconds and you will still win. You don't even have to throw a punch. Even better, you can actually just fly away completely, ignore the hostages and the shooters, and you will still beat the minigame. I don't know why it's set up like this, but it's just mind-blowing that it works. Glitches aside, that's it for this episode of Superman 64. Now, if you noticed in the feed in the top left that we ended the stage at the Daily Planet. So next stage, we're going to Daily Planet's Parkade. We're going to the parking lot of the Daily Planet. So for those of you who've always been wondering where Clark Kent parks his car, we'll finally learn the answer to that mystery next time.